Hello and welcome to another video. My name is this guy, but you can call me Elmo, and today I'm taking a look at the Boss Katana 50, comparing it to the Roland Cube 80. It's good to have you along, and I'll be right back after this intro. Okay, so like I said, I'm taking a look at these two amps today. One is by Boss and one is by Roland. They're basically the same company actually, so that's why I thought it would kind of make sense to take a look at these amps side by side. Now, I'm not going to do an exhaustive review of these amps. I've done a review of the Boss Katana earlier, which you can find below in the description. I've been thinking about reviewing the Roland Cube, but it's discontinued, so I'm not entirely sure if I should. Hey, but you can let me know in the comments if you think I should. Today I'm just going to go through some of the features, compare them, the differences mainly, and not go through all of the features because that would just take way too long. So, first off, the features on the Katana are that you have a clean, you have a crunch, you have a lead, and a brown channel. And in addition to those, you also have an acoustic, which means that you can connect an acoustic guitar to this and have this working as an acoustic preamp. Now that's a very nice touch. You don't have the same thing in the Roland Cube. You just have a clean channel, and then you have an overdrive channel where you have different amp models, where my favorite is classic stack, but you have tweed type things and metal and even a rectifier, and yeah, but my favorite is the classic stack. Both have delay, reverb, but this you can customize a lot more, the Katana, whereas the effects that are in the Roland Cube are there sort of permanently. 3-band EQ on both, but the Cube has an added presence button. You can also program both in the sense that you can program a couple of sounds into the Katana 50 plus have the one that you have on the panel, so that's 3, and you can have a clean, an overdrive, and a solo volume or solo thing programmed separately. So you have what you have on the panel and a solo thing programmed separately with a separate volume, which is great. So you can boost solos on both amps and have slightly different sounds, which is great. So they're, in that sense, they're very similar amps. Now, first off, I'm just going to go through the clean sounds. Clean sounds, in my experience with modeling amps, have been fairly good. And even on solid state amps, they used to be fairly passable. Overdrive sounds are where things get trickier, but we'll do the clean sounds first. I have slight bits of delay on both amps and roughly the same volume. Now, what you're hearing when I play is, or how I have them mic'd up is, I have a microphone slightly back in the room to pick up both evenly, so you shouldn't get any kind of miking issues with if I put the mic in the wrong place. So it should be fairly balanced. Okay, so let's start. First off, I think it's the Roland Cube. I have an A-B switch here. I forgot which one is B. And I was totally dead wrong. It's the Boss Katana right here behind me. Okay, so that's the clean sound of the Boss Katana 50. Here's the clean sound of the Roland Cube. So there's a very noticeable difference there. The Katana is darker and this one is quite bright, and it's even, I don't even have the bright switch engaged. It has a bright switch for the clean channel, so you can get it even brighter. But another thing I thought I'd just quickly show you is how well they take a pedal So I have a slightly overdriven tone from an Yngwie Malmsteen overdrive here on the floor. And first, if we here's the clean sound on the Katana. And if I engage the Malmsteen, and the same thing with the Cube. Doesn't sound great on the Cube. That might just be because it's so bright to begin with that this just gets annoying. But the Katana takes the pedal very nicely. So I know some people like to use their own pedals, and for obvious reasons, because they sound familiar and you people like your pedals. I like my pedals. Okay, so let's go over to the crunchy sounds in these two amps. First off, here's a crunch sound on the Katana, so this is the crunch channel. I'll add a bit of overdrive from the Yngwie. Okay, and then I'll go to the lead channel on the Katana. Now here's the lead channel. Here it is if I add the Yngwie overdrive. And then we go over to the Brown sound. And with the Yngwie. And so on. I switched it back to the clean channel now because I don't have the Footswitch and it was making a bit of noise behind me. You can of course use the inbuilt boost and overdrive pedals in the Katana, which you can even update to some other by Boss, which you can basically load whichever Boss pedals you want into that amp. Now, I'll go through the overdrive on the, what's it called? The Roland Cube. I'm just using classic stack for now. So this is the overdrive channel, but not the solo. So I've programmed a different solo sound into the amp. So here's what it sounds like. So as you can hear, that one has an inbuilt noise gate, or you might have been able to notice that. I'm not sure how this will transmit on YouTube, whereas the Katana doesn't. Now, then I also have the solo sound programmed, which is just basically more gain and slightly more volume. Okay, so that's the solo sound. Now what I'm using to control the Roland Cube is just a simple Footswitch like this. It's an old Marshall two-way Footswitch, and it's so old that I just noticed the cable's breaking, so I'm having trouble switching channels on that, but hey, who cares? So, but you can use any old two-way foot switch to control the channels, and it has a separate jack for controlling effects, which is great. With the Katana, you can get a dedicated foot switch for that, so you can control the different parameters on that one. But how do they sound? Well, here's the problem for me. The more I play the Katana, the less I like it. You might have noticed that when I changed through Crunch, Lead and Brown, the only thing that happened was that it got more gainy, more overdriven. But the sound was still the same. It was like 1 amp getting more and more gain, and it has a characteristic sound that sounds to my ear very plasticky, very fake. And the more I play it, the less I like it. The overdrive on the Katana, in my book, is totally terrible. This one, on the other hand, it's not a Marshall, it's not an Axe-FX, it's not a Kemper, but it's not terrible. And here is where it gets a bit more interesting, because I can change the different sounds within this. So if you want a slightly different type of sound, you can get it. So I'll just change from classic stack to metal, and you can see what I mean. Okay, so here is metal. The difference in sound between classic stack and metal is much bigger than the difference in sound between any of these. And it doesn't sound as cheap and made up, to my ear at least. So if we switch from that to the rectifier, now, I'm using this to demonstrate a point. It sounds totally different from the others. It sounds absolutely horrible. But I've heard some people use a sound like that from something else or from one of these. And even uploading videos on YouTube with a sound like that. If you're doing that, stop doing it. You're hurting people. But that sounds terrible. But at least it's a totally different type of sound, and you can dial in a better sound with the rectifier modeling thing if you so want. Don't know why anyone would bother on this, because you can't really get close. Now, it has other different ones. That was a Marshall Blues Breaker type thing. So there are plenty of different amp types in this, so you should be able to find your thing. Now, with this, I couldn't find my thing even if I spent 2 days just doing nothing apart from fiddling with the controls on it. And here's where we get to one key point in my book. I've heard it said that the speaker in the 50-watt version of the Katana is much worse than on the 100-watt version. Now, the crappy sound that I'm getting from this might very well be down to the speaker. But one thing that the Roland Cube has that the Boss doesn't is it has an external cab output. So you can connect it, so you can connect one of these to any 4x12, 2x12, or any kind of external cab, whereas you can't connect the Boss Katana to anything, which is a real bummer. I don't know who came up with the idea, hey, let's not put the external speaker jack on the back, because hey, that would just be too bothersome. because if it had one of those, I could show you if it's the speaker or if it's the amp. Because the problem is, I could buy a better speaker, then I'd have to install it into the Katana and pay money for a better speaker, and that would be a whole bothersome experience, and then it still might be totally crap. Well, so I don't know. It might be the speaker, it might be the amp. Now, in this case, I happen to like the sound of it. This used to cost a lot more than what the Katana 50 does these days. Second-hand katanas you can find readily available on eBay. Second-hand cubes, not as much really, which is kind of funny, but I think it might be because loads of people have been buying katanas and maybe they've noticed that they're not that great. Now, that's just a guess, and you're free to hate me if you so want. But you can't really find any of these. You get a few a month, but it's eBay, so you should get tons and tons a month all the time. And, well, they still cost more second-hand than a second-hand katana. You can get a new katana for roughly the same price that you can get a second-hand Roland. The thing I can say, I don't know about the reliability of the katana, but I do know that this thing has taken a beating. It's been on gigs I've had it for ages, all over the place it's been, and I've never had any trouble whatsoever with it. This is the first trouble that I'm having, and that's with the Footswitch. That's from an old Marshall valve state. So this is a great amp. Even for the price, I think it was 300 and something or 400 back when it was new. Might have been a bit more even, but for that price, it's been a great amp. It's been well worth the money. Now, if you're on a tight budget, a Katana might be just great. You can gig with both of these amps, and that's what makes them both, or that's a good thing about both amps. But if I had to choose, I would definitely, any day of the week, choose the Roland Cube. And you can get a smaller version. There used to be a 60-watt version, which doesn't have as many features. You don't get the solo volume, and that's a big minus in my book. But I still like the sound of it so much more that I'd still get that over the Katana. They have a 40-watt version, and they're different. This is the XL, I think it was, and they have the GX, which sounds great. It sounds absolutely brilliant. I used one of those in Spain when we were playing there last, and it worked fine instead of a Marshall, which I usually have. Now, yeah, so that's basically it. That's my comparison of the Katana 50 and the Roland Cube 80. Volume-wise, I know both are plenty loud that you can gig with them. Volume-wise, I know that both are loud enough that you can gig with them. But if you want to have a quick check, here's what happens when I turn them up a bit. So first off, the Katana. Okay, that was the Katana, and here's the Roland Cube. Oh, so that's plenty loud for sure. Now, that was basically all I have for you today. I might have forgotten something, and I know I've skipped features and so on and so forth, so this has not been an in-depth review of these two amps, just a quick comparison, which turned into a slightly longer one because I tend to ramble like I am now. Get over it. Anyway, so I hope you liked the video. I hope you press like if you did, give it a thumbs down if you didn't, and let me know which amp you preferred, and if you have any kind of other budget gigging amp that you would like to see reviewed, or if you have one that you think is great. Now, also subscribe if you haven't already, and please support me on Patreon, because I buy most of the gear that I review, and that helps me make more of these videos and give you honest reviews. I haven't bought this katana, I've stolen it. No, I borrowed it, and I'm happy that I haven't, because I don't like the overdrive. I do like the overdrive enough on this one. It's not great, but you get by with it. And so yeah, support me on Patreon so I can buy more gear to review. I hope to see you in another one. Take care. In the meantime, here's a bit from a song of mine so that you can just relax after this hectic review. See you. Bye.